thoughts and their prayers, we can, I think, now start this process of, natural process of grieving and healing. I started today talking with representatives of our community of faith and how involved they are and want to be in our community and to be helpful to our citizens. Also went over to University Hospital and met with some of the families of some of those folks who were so badly injured, and tried to do what little that I could do on behalf of the city to let them know that we care, that we will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to try to help them. There will be more activities. Obviously, I'm not the only one involved here. As I mentioned, we've got a lot of other elected officials. Everyone has come together as a team to try and do what needs to be done in this community to address this issue. We'll continue, but I know you all need to hear a great deal more from the chief, and it's hot in the sun. So what I'd like to do for a moment, though, is again introduce the governor of the state of Colorado, John Hickenlooper.
And before I do say anything, I want to recognize and thank Mayor Hogan. He has been a rock through this entire thing, and has been help coordinate this entire process to make sure that people know that this is isolated, that this is one event that has no relevance to what people should expect today or tomorrow or the next day. I think Chief Oates, and you all have seen this, has done an incredible job. Chief Garcia, the fire chief here in Aurora, this morning, his people were there. It is simply put just incredible, the ability of these guys to work together. The FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, we're working side by side all morning out on this off of Colfax, and that integration, there's got to be possible to have a silver lining in something like this. That integration, that ability to respond to the disaster. They had police there within a couple minutes. They had ambulances arriving there within 2.5 minutes, with 70 injured individuals, including the fatalities, being able to get them so incredibly rapidly so that they were under a doctor's care is a little short of a miracle. And it would not happen without a lot of training. And I think Mayor Hogan and his city council, their entire team, all the first Chief Oates and all the first responders, what they've done, again, it just demonstrates something that's why this is, despite an event like this, I keep stressing that this is one of the safest cities and one of the safest states in the safest country in the world. And there's a bunch of folks on our staff that took their kids to the movies last night, just as a way of trying to demonstrate that we're not going to be back down. I spent a good part of this morning. We watched through the video cameras and the robots some of the activities in that apartment, but we also went around the hospitals and visited the families and some of the survivors and kind of heard their stories, and it just can't help but move you to hear of people that through their actions, their selflessness, saved other people's lives. And if they're, I don't know, it allows you to hopefully shift this a little bit and say, what a miracle it wasn't worse, and what an amazing thing it is to live in a community where there are so many individuals, despite this one unspeakably troubled individual, there's so many others that are doing what's right. We've had a huge outpouring in terms of people that want to support the recovery. A number of the people who were hurt badly. A number of them are going to have lifetimes of recovery. So we've already started raising money for that. We've authorized a transfer. There's a victim compensation reserve at the state government. We've authorized the first installment of $200,000 to the 18th Judicial District to make sure we help victims. GivingFirst.org is the central location where we're trying to collect resources to make sure, again, that we try to make sure medical bills can be paid, but also so that people can have a fair shot at rebuilding their lives. Again, there's no way we can turn the clock back. There's no way that we can reverse what has happened, but we can take this aberrant, inconceivable event and do everything we can to make it better. So again, I can't emphasize how much Mayor Hogan's leadership has inspired. I got a call from Mayor Bach in Colorado Springs where they had all the fires, and he heard about this notion that we're going to have a central fund giving first, and his first statement was, how can I help? How can the people of Colorado Springs help the people of Aurora? And that's what makes this country great. Mayor Hogan?
Chief Daniels will be coming up in a second. You'll also be hearing from Chief Mike Garcia. Just like to take a second, and certainly, again, later we'll be saying more, but the first responders in this tragedy were unbelievable. Police department, the fire department, the call center people, the ambulance folks with Rural Metro, the number of jurisdictions that provided immediate support. If there's a silver lining, it's that we didn't lose more lives. And it's because our first responders not only did their job, they went above and beyond. One of the people that I met with this morning at the hospital is somebody who was hit with buckshot in his back, broken rib, punctured lung, broken collarbone, came out his back at the base of his neck. He's doing well right now, believe it or not. And that's because he got to the hospital and because the doctors and nurses at the hospital do the best job that they can do. So these first responders cannot be thanked enough. There's no way. And I hope that as time goes on, we can see more and more coverage of the job that they do. So with that, I'll give you Chief Danos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'd like to start with a discussion of the Paris Street effort. I was up there this morning. I was on the phone with Sheriff Doug Darr of Adams County. It was his robot that was in the location, and we were joking about how we were going to pay for the robot if something went wrong. And I'm happy to say that so far nothing has gone wrong, and I think we've eliminated, well, we believe we've eliminated the major threats there, but we still have some more work to do there. I don't quite understand this bomb stuff, so I'm very happy to ask Special Agent in Charge Jim Yacone of the FBI to come up here and explain to you what we were doing up there this morning and what we accomplished. And we couldn't have done it without the FBI's help, without the help of a number of bomb squads locally here in the metro area, and especially Adams County. But I'd rather Jim explain all that. He'll take questions with regard to the Paris Street location only. Jim?
Thank you, Chief. So the U.S. Attorney, the FBI, the ATF, we've all worked very closely in an integrated task force with the Aurora Police Department to address this very complex investigation. I want to reemphasize what the Chief just covered. The local bomb squad here in Colorado is one of the most capable in the country, with strong pre-established relationships between all partners. The assets and technical expertise provided by Adams County Sheriff's Office, the Denver Police Department, the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office, the ATF, and the FBI collaborate routinely with suspicious packages in this area, but rarely anything this complex. Last night, the local, state, and federal resources here in Colorado were joined by the FBI's national assets from Quantico, Virginia. These additional assets are part of the FBI's Critical Incident Response Group in our laboratory division. They include on-scene expertise, including explosive sampling chemists and device examiners, senior scientists from the FBI, post-blast recovery experts, explosive operations specialists, also known as bomb techs. And their purpose is to support the render-safe operations and to preserve the evidence inside the apartment, including and probably most importantly, the explosive and or incendiary improvised devices that were found in the apartment. Public safety is obviously paramount throughout the operation. My hat is off to the professionals from the Aurora Fire Department who kept us safe really throughout the dynamic operations that occurred at Paris Street for the last 3 days. A robot, bomb technicians, and dynamic explosive disruption tools were used to render safe multiple booby traps and improvised explosive and/or incendiary devices that were contained inside the residence. So briefly, what occurred, we first had to make entry with a robot. That robot was really skillfully driven by one of the Adams County bomb techs. And once we got rid of that first booby trap, which was really a wire across the front door, we then had to neutralize a hyperbolic mixture, a form of an oxidizer, and some fuel that we saw immediately inside. Once that was disrupted, the technicians did just a marvelous job. They went to the next IED and/or IID filled with an unknown substance, and they had to attack a triggering mechanism, and they did that very, very skillfully. We then saw multiple containers with accelerants and what appears to be additional triggering mechanisms, wires and fuses. I want to be clear and reemphasize what Chief Oates said earlier. The threat has been, it went very, very well. The threat has not been completely eliminated. It has been significantly reduced. We still have bomb technicians and evidence response recovery folks that literally have to go in there and handle unknown substances with potentially explosives or incendiary outcomes. An extensive amount of evidence is in the process of being collected, and we will bring this portion of the investigation to a close and allow the families back in their homes here probably by tomorrow. All evidence will be sent to the Terrorist Explosive Device Analytical Center at the FBI's lab at Quantico. And this is an ongoing operation, so we ask for your patience. And with the professionals putting themselves in harm's way currently as we speak, our hearts are with them, and our hearts are certainly with the victims and their families. Okay, with a few caveats, I will take some questions. Just a second. I want to reemphasize what the chief said yesterday. This case will be tried inside a court. Okay, so I have to be very careful with my responses. I do not want to jeopardize a future prosecution. So, again, I'm not going to elaborate on this. We have done some field tests, but we are sending that evidence back for further exploitation to the FBI's lab at Quantico. They will make the definitive conclusion as to what those substances are. I'm sorry, say again, sir? No, that's a very good question. So it was an extremely dangerous environment. If a neighbor or an unassuming pedestrian would have walked in that door, or God forbid a first responder, they would sustain significant injuries and or lost their life.
Agent, will you speak of preserving that crime scene and the delicate process of making sure that you didn't disrupt things that you would want to look at down the line?
Correct. So as we went through the operation today, it was very, very calculated. It was phased. It was a very phased approach, and it was pre-briefed to everybody involved. So the robot made entry. We were able to get rid of the first obstacle, or the tripwire. We then were analyzing that first unknown device, either an improvised explosive or incendiary device. Once we were past that phase, that robot was then looking around for evidence that it could pull out of there. The reason for that is if something should go wrong in the next phase of operations, unplanned, we would have lost that evidence. So it was very slow and methodical progression, but all in an effort to preserve the evidence at each phase of that operation. So again, I'm not going to go. What I want to protect are the tactics, techniques, and procedures that law enforcement has in its toolkit. So I really don't want to discuss that. I appreciate that question, though.
What you saw at that scene and what you've been briefed about based on your own extensive personal experience in law enforcement. Give us perspective from your head of your department.
So Anastasia, I appreciate that question. So it was certainly a sophisticated device. I really don't want to comment too much further on the sophistication of the device itself. Again, that will be made known by the experts at the lab, and then it will be put forward in a court of law. But yes, I have a lot of overseas experience and a lot of experience responding to critical incidents, and I've dealt with improvised explosive devices in many theaters before. This was certainly challenging for all involved. And again, I want to applaud the heroic efforts of that joint bomb squad here. They operate almost each and every day in a collaborative environment, and it went seamlessly, and then we rolled in those national assets. Thank you.
How much experience does one have to have in chin bombing to be able to make something like that, or is it something that you can find on the internet?
So again, there is unfortunately quite a bit available on the internet, but we don't want to go into any of the tactics, techniques, and procedures of what Mr. Holmes may have done, again, because we don't want to jeopardize the prosecution. I'll tell you what, folks, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Oates at this point, and I'll remain for some questions afterwards. Chief Oates.
Okay, thank you, Jim. All right, we've got some other material to cover. I have some new information for you with regard to the investigation. We've become aware that our suspect over the last 4 months had a high volume of deliveries, commercial deliveries of packages to both his work and home address. We think this begins to explain how he got his hands on all the magazines and ammunition yesterday that we talked about yesterday. We also think it begins to explain some of the materials that he had in his apartment. One of the things we are processing, as you might expect, as law enforcement, is potential defenses. And what we're seeing here is evidence of, I think, some calculation and deliberation. So we thought we'd share that with you. We are running down all those leads. This is an example where the partnership with the FBI is so great. If we find out that our suspect ordered something from someplace in Washington State, for instance, I don't have to figure out how to find out what that was or talk to someone at that location. I can talk to my friend Jim here, and he's got assets all around the country, and we can run down that stuff quickly. We've got some work to do getting subpoenas in some cases, but it's a hopeful area of investigative lead for us. Our tip line is working well. As of today, we have received 84 leads as a result of tips. They're all different kinds of leads. That they may include phone calls from people who knew the subject, those kinds of things, and we're working very hard and very closely with the FBI to run down all of those leads. Again, I'll offer the tip line. Anybody who knows anything about our suspect or anything about these events, 720-913, STOP, 720-913-STOP is the Crime Stoppers line, or 720-913-7867. With regard to the theater, the major crime scene, we have completed a thorough search of that facility for any further hazards, and there are none. We are in good shape there. We are working on and have removed all the personal effects that were left behind. As you might imagine, things that were left behind by people as they fled. There's a whole lot of material there. When we spoke to some of the victims yesterday, they talked about the need to get that stuff back. It can include wallets and IDs and handbags and shoes and clothing. And basically our goal is, now that it's all been removed, is to begin a process on Monday. We're not sure how quickly we'll get this done, but our hope is to start to make that stuff available to the victims and their families, provided any individual piece of personal effects has no additional forensic link that requires us to hold it as evidence. And we will work through our crime lab and through our victim advocates with the families to begin to make that stuff available to the families on Monday. With regard to our challenges on patrol, we are hopeful to get back to normal operations. patrol operations, as early as 5 p.m. this evening. Oh, going back to the theater, we think we'll be out of there in terms of our forensic work by Monday. And we're making Tuesday available for the defense to come in and look at the location. And we're hoping to hand the theater back to the business owners for resuming operations whenever they choose, but we hope to hand it back to them on Wednesday. So we hope to stop the 12-hour tours and get back to normal police operations at 5 p.m. today. And I was talking to Chief Murphy, our patrol chief, Ken Murphy, and he can't say enough, and I can't say enough, and all the senior leadership of the police department can't say enough for all that we have put our cops through and our civilian support staff through in the organization in the last 48 hours. Just extraordinary work. We're so proud of them. And we're happy that we're going to try and get back to some semblance of normalcy beginning this evening. Some interesting new developments with regard to, with me today, by the way, some of the dignitaries here include, again, colleagues, Andy Traver, who is the special agent in charge of the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, is here. With me also is Doug Abraham. Doug Abraham is the chief of police for the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Center Complex. Doug and I talked today, and there was some activity on that campus as a result of the suspect's involvement in that campus as a student. There were concerns about what he might have had access to. As you may or may not know, the folks in Colorado may not know that is among other things, a research facility. And out of an abundance of caution, Doug and his police department and staff at the campus, there was no evidence that he had access to any dangerous materials or that any dangerous materials were missing, but over the last 24 hours, they have done a thorough search of all their biohazards and radioactive materials that are used for research on that campus, and they have confirmed that everything is secure, that he had no access to any of those materials, and that nothing is missing. Now, yesterday, some non-essential personnel in some of their research facilities were evacuated or asked to leave the facility for the day. And the reason was not that there was a threat, in case you've heard any rumors. The reason was that those facilities could be swept by bomb dogs. And they borrowed quite a few bomb dogs from our federal friends and local friends, and they did a thorough search of those facilities, and as we had hoped, there were no hazards found. So that was done out of abundance of caution and not because there was any hint or tip that anything was actually wrong. And today, business is as usual on the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Center campus. With regard to Mr. Holmes, a lot of questions about motive. Now, we're not going to talk about motive, but I will reassure you that, again, with the assistance of our friends in the FBI, the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit is fully plugged into this investigation, and those folks are very, very talented at what they do. And over the coming weeks and months, they will be working very closely with us to try and figure out what his motivation was. But again, whatever we find out in that arena, we'll present that in court, and that will be to help us in terms of getting justice for the victims. Now, back to the Paris location. I just want to emphasize, the question was asked earlier. Again, we talk about motive, we talk about defenses, we talk about deliberation. Make no mistake, okay, this apartment was designed, I say, based on everything I've seen, to kill whoever entered it, okay? And who was most likely to enter that location after he planned and executed this horrific crime? It was going to be a police officer, okay? So make no mistake about it, what was going on there. And if you think we're angry, we sure as hell are angry about what has happened to our city, what has happened to these wonderful people who live here, and also what he threatened to do to one of our police officers. So we'll see how that plays out in court, but there's no question what the intent was behind whoever designed that device for whoever opened the door, okay? We don't expect any more briefings with regard to that location. Here's what we expect will happen the rest of today. We are hopeful that our explosive folks will get done there by 7 o'clock tonight. If they are successful, and if we remove all the explosive hazards, we are hopeful that we will allow the occupants of the other 4 buildings, not the principal building, the other 4 adjoining buildings or nearby buildings will be able to return to their homes sometime this evening. Evidence recovery will continue to take some time, and including some of the other hazardous material that might be in there. So we're not quite sure when we're going to be able to get the residents of that building back in. Hopefully that will be no later than tomorrow. And again, I can't thank enough our friends in the FBI and the bomb squads from Arapahoe County, Denver, and Adams County. Now, at this time, my colleague and the leader of a fellow bunch of heroes, the firefighters in the city of Aurora, Chief Mike Garcia, would like to make a few remarks. Mike?
Thank you, Dan. I'd just like to make three brief points on behalf of the Aurora Fire Department. The first is our heartfelt condolences go out to the families and the victims of this senseless and shameless act of violence. We truly feel for the family and the families and the victims, and our prayers are with you. The second point I'd like to make is how proud I am of our firefighters. What's gone by the last 48 hours, the last couple of days, it's mind-boggling for me. I really don't know what to say or how to say it, but the professionalism, the courage of our firefighters is just remarkable. I'm very proud of you. Job well done. But it takes more than just firefighters. It takes a team. And in Aurora, it begins with our dispatchers, it's the police, it's rural metro, it's the hospitals, and it's courageous citizens that stepped up that night. We could not have done this by ourselves. Any fire chief will tell you, you have limited resources, no matter how much we train. I also want to give a thank you to the International Association of Firefighters, Fire Chiefs, our state fire chiefs organization, as well as our metro fire chiefs. The help and offer that they gave us through this time is remarkable. I'd like to give you or share an example. The New York Fire and Police Department, they contacted us and they said one of the lessons they learned after 9/11 is you have to take care of your own. And that speaks volumes. It may be common sense, but they acted. They sent a team of their specialized professional counselors, and they're with us today. That speaks volumes. Thank you. And the third point I'd like to make is that the city of Aurora and the Denver metro area, it is a safe place. It's a safe place to live, raise your family, have a business. And I just don't want this shameless and senseless act of one man to make this difficult for families to move on. What makes Aurora an all-America city is how we handle these crises and these challenges. Go out, see a movie, go out into your city. Don't be afraid. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. We also wanted to offer you, and I know some of the media coverage has turned to the victims, as I think it should, and their families and what they've suffered through. And those are the people that we need to remember. Colorado is a very special place. I've had the privilege of working in 2 other jurisdictions, 2 other states. But Colorado is very special in how it approaches services for victims, and Aurora in particular. Carol O'Shea is the supervisor of our Victim Services Unit, and I know you're interested in hearing something about our services to victims and what they've been through. And Carol will speak a little bit about both the victims and the folks who have been serving them. She will not be taking questions, but she did want to offer a couple remarks. So, Carol?
Thank you. Yesterday, we were faced with the unthinkable task of bringing life-changing information into people's lives. Our community, victims, witnesses, and families were thrust into their worst nightmare. This is a grueling process of people stepping forward and saying, my family member, my friend, my loved one was in that theater. And first we were able to identify those who were being interviewed as witnesses, and ultimately those that were at hospitals, and reunite their families and send them. And then ultimately identifying the families whose worst fear had become a reality, and those were the families who had members deceased. We did victim notifications to those families in person with sensitivity. The process, by the way, is painful and long, and it's unforgivably difficult for families. And yet, these families inspire us by the strength they draw, not necessarily from us, but from within themselves and from their other family members to get through these difficult moments. Colorado has a very strong victim services community. They stepped up with hundreds of advocates who have been working around the clock. We have offers, overwhelming offers from local, state, and federal resources. We are reaching out frantically and as quickly as we can to try to get those resources to people and notifying people as quickly as we can. We do want to make sure that people know that we're here for them and that we have services available. We have resources being offered. And if we can help get that word out, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. Just a few more items, and then I'll take some questions. The Aurora Public Schools has a disaster resources and recovery centers open. These are open for members, family members. It's sponsored by our Victim Services Unit, Aurora Mental Health, and the American Red Cross. It's
We've
really
been listening to a live press conference with the police and the FBI working there in that apartment building of the suspect, and the surrounding apartment buildings can get back inside. We also heard that the suspect received a high volume of commercial deliveries and packages in the last 4 months, which is evidence, according to them, to calculation.